I am teaching you how to be in a relationship with me.
I would rather them have this beautiful relationship and my mom feel connected to my kids.
That emotional immaturity then ends up sort of bleeding into all these other reasons, which we're going to see things like boundary violations, addiction in blended families.
What are you going to do to intervene, or what will happen if they have a hard time?
Dad, you are not allowed to drink around my kids. You can't drink in my house. Instead of saying, you could say, I don't like people to drink around my kids.
We're really trying to practice parenting or the approach in this way.
I mess up every single day.
What do healthy boundaries look like in a family?
Thank you for listening to Help Them Bloom. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us reach more parents like you. Every share, comment, and review really makes a difference. Thanks so much for being part of our community.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so excited for today's guest. I'm here with Whitney Goodman, who is the psychotherapist behind the popular Instagram account you might know, Sit with Whit. She's also the founder of Callinghome, author of Toxic Positivity, and the owner of the Collaborative Counseling Center, a private online therapy practice in Florida. She is a very niche, specific audience, which is so interesting. We're going to talk about today. She helps adult family members have better relationships, set boundaries, and navigate estrangement. Whit, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I find this to be a really interesting topic, especially because I know that I often, or most often, have people on here talking about their small children and raising their small children, but I really kind of want to focus today on the adult children, and that's really who you see. How did you kind of land there to work with adult children?
It was something that just kept coming up in my practice, mainly in 2020 around COVID. I was talking to so many people dealing with this issue, and I've always worked with family relationships, but I was like, wow, this is a niche that doesn't seem like there's a lot of people working in it. And I just dove in, and there's been enough content for the last 5 years.
Forever and ever.
Yeah.
Endless content there. Everybody discovering just how much there is behind that. Well, what are some of the most common reasons that you find that children become estranged from their parents or family members? Because that's a very intense decision. What do you see?
So I did a survey recently of around 2,300 adults who are estranged from their parents. And the most common reason that was cited was emotional immaturity. And 98% of the survey respondents said that emotional immaturity played a role in why they were becoming estranged. And I think that emotional immaturity then ends up sort of bleeding into all these other reasons, right? Which we're going to see things like boundary violations, addiction, in blended families. This can happen sometimes where the person is marrying someone new, and that creates conflict with the adult children. But I really think at its core, we're finding that a lot of adults, especially millennials and even Gen X, are wanting a certain level of emotional maturity from their parents, and they're not able to give it.
What do you feel like are the fundamentals of that, of emotional maturity? What does that consist of?
So when you have an emotionally immature parent, you're going to see that they can't take accountability. They have difficulty having conversations about problems. There's no apologies, boundary violations everywhere. And these behaviors, I think, bleed into so many facets of life that it makes it very hard to have relationships.
Reminds me of kind of the authoritarian way of parenting, where just there's no voice for the child in the family. And this misconception, I would love to address this with you, this misconception that apologizing to your children when you have made a mistake or you have, become out of control or whatever, apologizing really kind of takes away your, it discredits you or takes away your authority or it damages your relationship. It's actually the opposite, right? When you don't actually take an accountability, what do you see happen there?
I mean, most of the adults I work with will say that their parent has never apologized to them, or that they can't remember a time, or maybe it was one time, but it was very much oh, I'm sorry I did that. let's move on, like not a real apology. And I think you're so right that it's rooted in this belief that like I'm the parent and you're the child. And something that I see that's a huge problem that I think also ties back to emotional immaturity is that some parents cannot give up that authoritarian role when their child becomes an adult, and especially among young adults. And so when you have this parent that is like hovering over you, wanting to tell you what to do, control your life, those young adults are saying, I have to cut you off or I cannot live my life. Like you're giving me no other choice but to do that because I try setting boundaries with you and you keep telling me what to do. And so if you have a parent that can't apologize and also wants to be the authority, it's very hard to have a relationship with that parent in adulthood.
Yeah, you can't evolve. Like you can't be your own person.
Right.
And then I imagine like, and we'll talk about this a little further down the line today, but I imagine just the complexity that comes with now you having your own kids and how that plays into the boundaries or your own parent trying to parent your own kids and getting in the way, right? Like I'm assuming that just like opens up a whole other
for sure
level of intrusive-ness, I imagine. I mean, I've lived it. I don't have to imagine.
Anybody
like,
with kids, you're
I'm
like,
I imagine. Like, no, I don't have to imagine. I live it all the time. I live it all the time. But yeah, so that's where the boundary work is it's so hard, but it's so important. What would you say, like, what do healthy boundaries look like in a family? Like, what would you say, like, why are they so crucial? Which I think we know, but let's kind of clarify. Why are they so important? And then what would you say they should look like?
Yeah, I love the definition of boundaries that I think it's Nedra Tawwab that said this about like boundaries show you how to love me, essentially. Like I am teaching you how to be in a relationship with me. And I think that some people hear boundaries and they're like, you're giving me rules. You're telling me how to be. And that puts people on the defensive. But if we can instead think of it as like, I'm just telling you what I like. These are my preferences. This is how to be in a relationship with me. But also that we know that boundaries are about what we're doing. Right. And so I think sometimes, especially when we think about generational boundaries, we think like, I'm going to tell my mom what she can and cannot do. And that usually doesn't work out very well. When instead we can be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do when my mom does X. These are kind of like the parameters that I'm going to set to keep me and my family safe. But boundaries in families are also flexible and they change over time. Like, especially as we age and our parents age and our siblings age, like those boundaries have to be dynamic and flexible and open for conversation. And not like these walls that we just put up to control people.
I love that. I love that definition of I'm showing you how I like to be loved or how this feels like love to me because they're so personal and they're so different for everybody, right? I want to take a quick break from this episode to share more about my services offered at Hatch and Bloom. Whether you're seeking personalized one-on-one guidance or insightful group learning, we have the right support for you. Our private sessions provide you with the tools and strategies needed to support your child's growth. So take the next step in nurturing your child's potential and book a session with me today. Please visit hatchandbloom.co. That's .co. Or you can email me at evelyn@hatchandbloom.co. Now back to the episode. You know, something you said there really resonated, which is not telling your parent what to do, but it's almost like focusing on my action, or it's really about me and how I'm going to protect myself. So can you give us an example of what that would look like?
Yeah, totally. So I think that, we try to control things about people like they're drinking, let's say. So let's say you have kids and your dad drinks a lot and you don't want him drinking around your kids. Instead of saying, Dad, you are not allowed to drink around my kids. You can't drink in my house. You could say, I don't like people to drink around my kids. So if you're going to be drinking, we're not going to be there. We're going to take the kids. We're going to leave if you decide to drink. It really changes the power dynamic there of you trying to say, you're not allowed to drink because what are you going to do? If your dad pours a beer in front of your kids, are you going to start yelling at him and saying, you can't drink in front of the kids, put that away? it's probably not going to be effective. It's more effective for you to be able to say, okay, you decided to drink. We agreed that we're not going to do that around the kids. So we're going to go now and we're going to remove ourselves from
That's where
this
you have the power.
situation.
That's where,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
That's so interesting because when I work with parents of younger kids, I actually use the exact same tactic with them instead of kind of putting it on your child of like, you can't hit,
Yeah.
you can't yell, you
Yeah.
can't, right? It's almost like that's, first of all, they can, and they are, and they will,
Right.
right? Secondly, it's really more about what are you going to do to intervene or what will happen if they have a hard time and they lose control or they make a poor choice or whatever. And it really, it's the same thing. It's just you're doing it, you're telling it to your child, but you're also now saying, okay, let's do the same thing with our own adults, our own parents.
Totally. Especially if your parents are emotionally immature, I think that it's a
Yeah.
good strategy to almost think of them as toddlers sometimes and say they obviously don't have the skills to control this. And so me telling them, much like a toddler, to control that behavior probably isn't going to elicit that change.
Like a power struggle. It's like a power struggle.
Totally. Totally.
That I imagine, though, for a lot of people, this would be the first time that they really are setting boundaries, especially with their parents. So how do you kind of get over that initial fear, I guess?
Yeah.
It's scary.
Oh my gosh, it's so scary. And this is very like cultural and generational. And like we all grow up with these norms, right? Of like, this is what you can say to your parents and this is what you can't say. That I think everyone has to find their own level of comfort with like, what am I okay with tolerating from my parents because they're my parents, and what is actually really having a negative impact on my life. And then empowering yourself and kind of like giving yourself that pep talk of, I'm an adult. I get to decide what I want my life to look like, and I have power and agency and control. I'm not a child anymore, because when you're a kid, you have to learn how to survive your parents.
Yeah.
And
you don't have that choice
anymore. Yeah.
You really have to find your own power there too. So and for a lot of people, I assume this is like, it comes with therapy work. It comes with really like healing a lot of those wounds, because those wounds from your inner child, like, will definitely come up again as you're confronting the same situation, even as an adult, right? With your own parents, even as an adult.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you have to get comfortable with that. Yeah. That like all that's when it is nice to definitely have a therapist.
How can adult children recognize that their boundaries are being crossed? Like, what are some cues that maybe are like, okay, this isn't feeling good, or this isn't working for you?
I think, again, this is different in every family, but some things I like to think about are like privacy, physical boundaries, them spreading information about you to people that you did not want to know, them making decisions for you. And you have to think about like, what is my level of comfort in all those areas? But I noticed that for most people, it's like this inner sense of like violation and discomfort comes up of like, I don't want them to have control over that part of my life. I don't want them to do that. And there are certain things that like my mom does that I think is fine, doesn't bother me. And I'm sure other people might be like, oh, that's a boundary violation for me. That feels uncomfortable. And so it's so personal, but really just getting in touch with like, what does it feel like for me when I feel like my needs, wants, and desires are being like trampled on and ignored?
Yeah. And do you feel like some people don't even know that because they've ignored them for so long?
Definitely. And that's why I find that for some people, it's like once they get married or they move out of the house, or especially when they have children. I mean, I think for my work, it's like having kids opens up Pandora's box on a lot of this stuff for adults and their parents. But you might start getting feedback from people in your life being like, have you ever noticed like when your mom does that? Or you notice that their parents don't do stuff like that. And you start to compare. And that's also a good time to check in and be like, is that weird? Does that bother me?
Yeah, because it's been so normalized for you that you don't even know. Let's talk about Pandora's box. I want to go there. So
yes,
you have your own kids. What happens? How does this shift things?
I think having kids makes everyone in the family like go a little crazy. And I've seen this just as a universal experience across cultures. Like at Callinghome, we have people from so many different countries and backgrounds, and it's all the same experience of like, when I had kids, my parents kind of freaked out and like wanted to assert control. They wanted to make decisions. They wanted to be involved, or they were kind of trying to like redo my childhood, or some of them become even worse than they were with you, and they're abusive and cruel and you don't want them around your kids. But either way, I feel like it evokes some type of like reshuffling of how the family works together when that happens.
How do you feel like somebody who has been exposed to violation of boundaries or emotionally immature parents and wants to do so differently now that they have their kids, breaking that generational cycle?
Yeah, it's really hard because you have to decide, like, what are my parents doing now? I think a lot of people get really tripped up in how they were treated as children,
Little kids.
and that getting really reactivated when they have their own kids. And there are people out there who having their kids around their parents is actually dangerous and not a good idea. And I want to, like, for anybody listening who like was, exposed to abuse of any kind at the hands of your parents, like that's a threat to take seriously when it comes to exposing your children to that. But then there's another camp of people that I find that their parents actually, like, they become a little bit better with their grandkids. They chill out a little bit. They're not as crazy. And it's hard for those adults to watch their kids be treated better than them and have better interactions. And they can kind of be on edge all the time of like, when are you going to revert
When is the ball
back?
going to drop?
Yeah. And also this question of like, why didn't you do that for me? And even being jealous of your own kids, like I think is a normal feeling that we don't want to admit, but it comes up.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's so complex because you really have to do a lot of your own. Basically, the answer to everything is you have to do your own work.
I know. I'm sorry.
So you have to do your own work for this, and you have to do your own work for this.
There's no quick fix.
No, for like to be a parent, but also to be a child, you have to do your own work in every direction, right? As I get a lot of these questions from parents that are like, we're really trying to practice parenting or the approach in this way. Like, I really want to like build my kid up. I don't want to criticize, or let's talk about something specific, like around their eating habits or their relationship with food, or we're really encouraging like all foods. And then they go to grandparents' house and it's like a totally different vibe where maybe they're making comments and like they're talking about, fat versus skinny and you ate too much. And like, where do you draw the line? Because you can't expect, and this is true, you can't expect your parents to just be like copy paste of you and do everything that you want to do. So like, what would you say, like, what do you let go of versus what is like crucial?
Yeah, it's such a fine line. And I do see people getting really caught in like the weeds trying to police other people. And I think that that's a manifestation too of like working out childhood stuff with your parents that isn't really resolved. I feel like you have to figure it out for yourself, but there is also power in your child being exposed to different things, right? And being able to have conversations about that and talking to them. And obviously this is age dependent, but my son has started calling certain foods healthy and unhealthy. And I was like, where did he learn that from? And so I'm like asking the nanny, I'm asking my mom. My mom's like, oh yeah, I've been talking to him about like healthy foods. And I was like, I don't really know if I like love that. And then I was thinking about it and I started having a conversation with him about it. My son's only 3.5, but we were able to talk about it. And I think that there's a difference between that and of course your parents calling your kid fat every day and being demeaning to them. But it's okay for things to not be perfect. It's okay for them to be in like the realm of respect and care, right? And for it to be different from you, as long as it's not being like mean and cruel and harmful to them.
Yeah. I had to let go of something. Like I remember, I think I've realized through the years that my mom's love language, one of her love languages really is gifts and giving gifts. And like, this is the way she shows love.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was like, you're like overindulging them. Like every time they see you, before you even say hi, you're like,
Yep.
here, that wasn't sitting well with me. But you know what? After really kind of stepping back and sitting and watching, like this is how she connects to them. And I had to let go of that and be like, I would rather them have this beautiful relationship and my mom feel connected
I
to my
totally
kids
agree.
than to like micromanage every little thing she does. Like I care about bigger things, right? So I care like
Right.
she doesn't criticize them or say things that are really harmful, like she doesn't. But I had to let go of that, and I'm okay with it. Like it's not like I love it, but I'm okay with it now.
Yeah. And maybe the conversation then with your kids, like in this situation, is more about like, how can we express gratitude and be thankful and, be appreciative and say all, like, thank you. And
Yeah.
like, there's still lessons that can
Yeah.
come
And one of
out
them
of
is that I'm
that.
not going to give them a gift every time I see them.
Exactly.
I'm like, that's the number
I
one lesson.
know. And that is sometimes I'm selfishly like, okay, well then now I don't have to buy
Well,
it.
yeah, she comes with like giant bags of clothes for them for the next 2 years. And I was like, all right, well,
Yeah,
cleans
exactly.
out the closet because the clothes don't fit and comes with the new
Right.
wardrobe. And I'm not, whatever. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's like finding out your non-negotiables
Yeah.
and then getting flexible
Yeah.
on the rest.
But I agree with you. This almost reminds me a little bit of like how we even handle situations of like co-parenting where they're doing things really differently, or a child, you can't control the other parent or what they do, right? Even in the same home, you can't control the other parent or what they do.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it is through even empowering your child. I think we don't always need to go towards the parent or towards the grandparent, but I think depending on age, obviously, but I think there's a benefit to exploring how something sits with them, what they thought about it, and like, is there something they would like to say back, or like asserting themselves in situations. And I just think that sometimes working through the child to really kind of hold their own is a really nice tactic as well.
Absolutely. I love that.
Hey everyone, it's Evelyn. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your support truly means the world to me. If you're interested in hosting a parenting workshop, I'd love to connect. Whether it's a private session for parents, a school event, or a corporate workshop, I'm here to help bring valuable insights and strategies to your community. Let's chat and make it happen. Please visit hatchandbloom.co. That's .co. Or you can email me at evelyn@hatchandbloom.co. Okay, so last but big question. How do we prevent ourselves from being in that group of, our kids wanting to be estranged from us? And you know what? I think I'm obviously going to give you the mic here, but I think just to ease the anxiety that parents might feel here, it's simpler probably than
Oh my
we
gosh.
think, and they don't need as much as we think, but I'll let you.
Yeah. You and I are both therapists. And so I imagine that we hold some of the same anxieties of like, what am I doing today that's going to make my child not want to talk to me when they're an adult? And especially,
what will they say about me in therapy?
I'm like, oh my gosh, she worked too much or she did this. Like, every child is going to have things to say about their parents. And that's actually such a healthy developmental stage, right? When you're moving through the teenage years and young adult years, to be able to look at your family and say, I like this stuff and I didn't really love this. And our kids are going to be adults in a totally different time period than we are. And so I hope and pray that all of our children do things differently than we do, because it would be kind of weird if they just did like copy and paste. And so knowing that if your kid decides to make different choices than you, it is not an insult to your parenting, I think has been a really freeing realization for me personally and professionally. And then the really simple stuff that I think you're getting at is just like apologize and when you're wrong and repair.
The repair is
It's all it is. Because you're going to mess up. Like you're going to mess up I mess up every single day. Or there's things that my kids are like that, I didn't like when you did that. And can we have conversations? Can we take feedback from our child in the same way that you would from a boss, a partner, anybody, and say, I want to get better at this job. So your opinions matter to me. And I'm going to listen to them and integrate them in a way that makes sense for our family and for your age and developmental status. And like the parents that do that, I think they maintain relationships with their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. The repair is so sacred. It really is. And I think it's easier said than done, because in the face of your triggers and how upset or overwhelmed or burnt out you are in the moment, that feels like often the last thing you want to do. But it is, oh my gosh, it's like really just keeping this bridge of communication and showing your kid too that like you're back to the safe, loving parent that they know
Yes.
and that they rely on. And the more that you do that, the more they can handle the ruptures. Like the ruptures they're part of relationships.
Totally.
They're okay. It's the repair. Obviously, you want to mean what you say, right? So you don't want to just be repairing all freaking day because whatever, I'm not going to try, but it really just makes the biggest difference. Like at this point, my child's 9, my oldest is 9, and I can just start to give her this like look of like, I'm really sorry. And she already knows, and she's already gotten to the point where she'll tell me, I remember this was hard for me at first, where she would say like, I'm not ready. Like she'll say that I'm not ready for like a hug, or, I just want to be alone right now.
Yeah.
And that triggers my anxiety of like, I need to comfort her. Like I need to let her know. But I've learned, I guess this is the boundary work you're talking about too, is like, she's telling me like, this is what feels safe for me right now. And I need you to respect that. And it's not about me. It's really about her needs in that moment. If I were to go in and just not care and like just kind of smother her, that would really be about my needs, not what she needs right now. So I give her space, and always there's a moment where she like will just melt into me, always.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of learning each other's language and what each of us needs in that moment. But
Totally.
I love this I love this quote. I don't remember where I heard it, but where it's like, you want to have this relationship with your kids where they know they can tell you anything in the world, but they don't have to tell you everything. And I love that kind of duality there.
Yeah, I love that too.
Well, with the work that you do is so important. We're on two opposite ends.
Yes.
You are doing a lot of the healing, and I'm hoping to do a lot of the proactive setting good paths. But I super appreciate you being here. Can you just kind of chime in and say what Callinghome is for everybody to know?
Yeah. Callinghome is our online community for adults that are working on their family relationships. We focus on a different topic every month. And then we also have support groups that are run by therapists for adult children, emotionally immature parents, estranged adult kids. We have tons of groups. So as a member, you can get unlimited groups every month, and you can find that at callinghome.ee.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Help Them Bloom. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us reach more parents like you. Every share, comment, and review really makes a difference. Thanks so much for being part of our community.